Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Glad to have you here this fine Monday morning. If you want to follow along, join me in Ephesians chapter 5. We'll be starting in verse 9 this morning, and Paul's going to just follow up on what he has already said. He's told us to walk as children of light. If you remember from last week, and he's or telling us he's been telling us to walk according to the Word of God. Now he tells us to walk as uh, as children of light, and he says if we do that, he says then because of that, he says if you do that, then you will bear fruit. He says for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. If we are walking as children of the light, if we're walking as a child of God, he says then the works of darkness and the works of fruitlessness. Difficult word for me to get out. He says we won't have those things. That they don't have any part in our life. They don't have any benefit for us. It doesn't do any good. And so the more that we turn to Christ, the more we act like Christ, the more we live for Christ, then the more that the world will hate us. Take no part in those unfruitful works, but instead expose them. It's shameful to even speak of the things they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore, it says, "Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." For a believer, let me just ask you this question. The longer you live for God and the longer you serve God and the closer you get to God, don't you feel a little bit less at home in this world? Don't you feel a little bit less comfortable with the things that are taking place in our world, taking place around us today? There were things that perhaps we used to even be part of, or at least laugh at, or turn our backs at, and not really even pay any attention. But today, as the light shines on those things, then we are disgusted by those things. That there are things that once upon a time didn't bother us. We didn't see any. So you didn't see any thing wrong with you. Again, you if you didn't at least participate in them, you didn't care. But now it even bothers you to know that those things are part of our society. That there are people out there living in that kind of lifestyle and doing those kind of things where perhaps maybe once upon a time at work someone could maybe, just to use an example, tell an off-color joke of some kind, and maybe you didn't laugh at the joke, or maybe you didn't even necessarily stand and but you stood there and it didn't bother you. You didn't care if they were telling it. It didn't. But now when you hear those kind of things, or maybe you used to, someone used the Lord's name in vain, and maybe you didn't talk that way, but you know you wasn't doing it. But now when somebody takes your Lord's name and uses it in that way, it makes you cringe. What's happening? Then the light's being shown on those things. That's what's happening in our life. And as we walk in the light and we gain more light, the more uncomfortable we become with the things of this world. And more importantly, the more uncomfortable the world becomes with us. Have you noticed that as you get closer to Christ, maybe some of the people who used to be really good friends with you, maybe they don't come around as much. Maybe they're a little bit less involved with you. Why? Because your light makes them uncomfortable, because it exposes what you see in the darkness, what's not seen really in the darkness. And so he tells us here that we're to walk as the children of light, trying to figure out, discern what's pleasing to the Lord, and don't even take part in the unfruitful works of darkness. They're of no benefit, but instead, as a child of light, as a child of Christ, we expose those things. And what a statement in verse 12. For it's shameful to even speak of those things. And all of us have some experience with things that we see happening in the streets today that once upon a time people wouldn't even do or take part of in secret. He says, but show those things, expose those things. Awake, O sleeper, let Christ shine on you. That's my prayer for you today. Let Christ shine on you. Let him shine on you. Let his light shine through you to expose the darkness of this world.